5 hosts, 4 divisions, all battling it out for the Holy GrAHL of the American Hockey League, the Calder Cup. This is the Holy GrAHL podcast. Here are your hosts, Zach Power, Andrew Rinaldi, Corey Swartz, and Deana Weinheimer.
Hello, all you beautiful people, and welcome to episode 66 of Field Pass. Oh my God! Okay, we're already gonna have to get on started on here. All right. Wow, we're just really rolling on here pretty well. All right. Give me a second. Oh geez, hang on. Okay, we're better. We're back. All right. 1, 2. Hello, all you beautiful people out there, and welcome to episode 66 of Field Pass Hockey's AHL podcast, The Holy GrAHL. This is the episode for May 3rd, and we are here to give you a recap of the last week in AHL hockey. Episode 66, I believe that was Emperor Palpatine's favorite episode, but let's move on here to our introductory question as we kind of get you guys back in the know with the crew. I'm going to ask to my beautiful co-host here, who or what has been the biggest surprise for you so far this postseason? Now, that can be good or bad. You decide.
Well, to quote another fun line from the Emperor, we just have to do it. So, and execute Order 66. So for me, this is Corey Swartz here in case you forgot what I sound like. I do have a little bit of a cold this week, so I appreciate y'all bearing with me a little bit here. But for me, I don't know if I'd really call it a surprise because I kind of saw this coming a little bit. We'll talk about it a little bit more in the Atlantic side of things, but the Hartford WolfPack have really surprised me so far. Is I kind of, alluded to in my previews a little bit on it, but I expected them to really need to be like, an offensive dynamo just to outscore the Providence Bruins. They've won 2 games by doing the exact opposite, by being so good defensively. I mean, Dylan Garand, I don't think anybody really expected it to come of him, but, he stopped 43 out of 44 shots in 2 games. Now, of course, I'm sure he wishes every game was like game 1 where he only faced 14 shots and had a shutout. That's about as good of a night as they come for sure. But Hartford's defensive structure has impressed me so much, especially since a juggernaut team like the Bruins. But it seems to be that time of year, guys, where Bruins, seem to run into some problems with choking. So maybe it's not as surprising as it should be.
So hi, I'm back. If you guys forgot who I am, Deana Weinheimer. Took about a month off, but I am back at least for this episode. Then I'm off again for at least one more, but then I'll be back full time. Kind of convenient vacation plans in there. But Corey, I should have talked over your choice because I also chose Dylan Garand from the Hartford WolfPack. His stats, I mean, honestly, let's just say this now. If you would have told me mid-season that the Hartford WolfPack would be in the playoffs and doing what they're doing, I would have laughed just at the word playoffs. There was no way. And now this kid here, after playing 32 games in the regular season, having a .301 goals against average, has now played 4 games in the Calder Cup Playoffs, only has let in 3 goals, 86 saves, a .75 goals against average. No. What? There's like some weird voodoo something going on in Hartford, but good for them. And hey, they're getting some reinforcements now since the Rangers got knocked out of the playoffs, which I also did not have on my bingo card, especially at the hands of Kira Schmid. But we'll talk about that here in a little bit.
Oh, yeah, we're going to be talking a lot about Hartford, but I'm Andrew Rinaldi. I'm on the Chicago Wolves and Grand Rapids Griffins beat, so I've had a lot of free time here lately, but you guys kind of took my response. So I'm gonna go a different route here. I'm gonna go with the Coachella Valley Firebirds. I'm not really expecting them to be here on the brink just 3 games in, but here we are, and you felt them coming out real hot in game 1, and I feel like the Eagles have made the adjustments, and now we got to see how the Firebirds respond. But after the regular season they had, and it almost looked like at times that they can flex their muscle even over Calgary there. And yes, justice for Potts. We got to get him out of the broadcast booth and back onto the ice, hopefully by sometime this playoff. But yeah, I was really not expecting, especially to get shut out by the Eagles with all the talent and firepower they have in that lineup. So Kraken advance, so they're not getting any reinforcement anytime soon. It's time to pull the bootstraps up there in Coachella Valley. But now you guys know us. I mean, of course you do. You've been with us all year and you love us so much. We love you. And we're glad that you're here because we have so much playoff action to cover with you. I'm stoked, but we got to cover a little bit of news here first. It's just a little bit because today on May 2nd, the AHL announced the Man of the Year team winners for all 32 franchises. Now, each one has their own Man of the Year, and it covers a wide variety of activities and community service that these players do off the ice in their own communities. And it's just you could name a bunch of different guys from each and every team, but these are the ones who were recognized and were given the awards here for this year. Anyway, we're just gonna go down the list, and you're gonna hear some names from each team, and we'll go from there. So from the Abbotsford Canucks, Chase Waters. I believe it's pronounced Waters. Now I thought it was Wooters, but Sandra Prusino is saying Waters, so I'm going to go with her pronunciation because she is she's a little above me in the knowledge of the hockey world.
Just slightly more qualified than us, right?
A little bit. I respect her. And then when you go over to the Bakersfield Condors, you have Calvin Pickard. The Belleville Senators, Igor Sokolov. The Bridgeport Islanders is Ryan McKinnon. Over there in Calgary, it's Oscar Dansk. In Charlotte, it's Dominic Franco. Chicago's captain, Max Lajoie. In Cleveland, Dylan Simpson, someone Deana knows a little bit about. Coachella Valley, Brogan Rafferty takes it home. In Colorado, it's Ryan Wagner. And for the Grand Rapids Griffins, it's goaltender Victor Bradstrom.
Yeah, and continuing right along with that, we have Bobby Trevino from the Hartford WolfPack, Jake Bishop from the Henderson Silver Knights, Mason Morelli from the Hershey Bears, Dakota Murmis from the Iowa Wild, Lucas Condotta from the Laval Rocket, Adam Brooks from the Lehigh Valley Phantoms, Jimmy Oligny from the Manitoba Moose, Cole Schneider from the Milwaukee Admirals, Cameron Gauntz from the Ontario Reign, Josiah Didier from the Providence Bruins, and Malcolm Subban of the Rochester Americans.
And rounding out the list, starting with the Rockford IceHogs, Garrett Mitchell, and then moving out west, we have Chase DeLeo out there with the Gulls, Andrew Agazzino with the Barracuda, Springfield, friend of the pod, Will Bitton receiving the Man of the Year award. Daniel Walcott for the Syracuse Crunch. Down in Texas, the recipient is Curtis McKenzie. Joseph Wool is the recipient for the Toronto Marlies, even though he is with the Maple Leafs right now. Boko Amama with the Tucson Roadrunners. Samuel LaBerge with the Utica Comets. And then Ty Smith for the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins. Again, that is the list of the individual team winners of the IOA American Specialty AHL Man of the Year Awards. And then from that list, somebody will be chosen for the 2022-23 Yannick Dupree Memorial Award, which will be announced on Thursday, May 4th. So that's coming up real soon. But I just wanted to kind of give a special shout out to Dylan Simpson here real quick. He's just one of those players that it doesn't matter what his playing status is. His main focus has always been on community. And I just wanted to give you guys just a little bit of a highlight of what he's done to receive this award. You know, even before the season started, he reached out to the Monsters wanting to do some sort of connection with the Special Olympics in Northeast Ohio. Thus, Simmer Sidekicks was born. it's just a way to host local athletes from Special Olympics every Saturday game. He's worked with A Special Wish. He did the tour with the Monsters, traveling to local ice rinks for autograph sessions, practices. He did Hockey for Heroes, and just spending so much time out in the community, spreading hockey amongst the children in Northeast Ohio, and then he helped get those Special Olympics players down into the cave crew, getting them outfitted with Monsters gear, just a real good community ambassador. So great job, Dylan Simpson, Cleveland Monsters captain through and through.
Yeah, I was a little shocked on my end in a good way, because in Grand Rapids, it's been the year of the lash off, right? I mean, this man has been given every reward, every recognition in Laval, in Grand Rapids. And I figured, he's always active in the community with the team. This would be a slam dunk here. But I actually love the nomination for Victor Brattstrom here. For those who don't know the story with Bratz, he went to the Betsy DeVos, I don't know if it's Betsy DeVos. It's the DeVos Children's Hospital there in Grand Rapids, and offered the children there to design his new mask. And they had 3 kids who were patients there visit the team and present his new mask to him, and he wore it for the rest of the season. And it's very touching to see him involved in all the work there, and to see him just kind of raise the hopes of kids in need and put a smile on their face for those who really need it. And I love seeing that. Victor was always great to interview, and even some of the tougher losses this year, it was almost kind of made me sad to see him sad, but this puts a smile on everyone's face. I was glad to see him nominated. It was very well deserved. And, what more can I say about Max Lajoie over there in Chicago that hasn't already been said? I mean, this man's as incredible off the ice as he is on it, and he's pretty good on the ice. So, yeah, there we go. Nice little look at Brad's getting his new helmet. The boys all love it, and, of course, the kids love it as well. And it's again another touching moment to see. Big heart on the big Swedish goalie. We love to see it.
Yeah, and I mean, I could go along right with you guys here, talking about Hershey's selection being Mason Morelli. He's a guy, I feel like in Hershey with a lot of the community outreach, it's almost unsung hero type of stuff, right? Like, you don't always hear about or see all the fruits of those labors, be shown directly. It's not always a mask type of thing. It's not always quite like that. But this year is a little bit different because, I mean, for Mason Morelli, he's a guy that's, he's all over the place. He's almost involved in any community outreach that the Bears do. And, it's cool because it continues a long line of tradition for the Bears of, some fan favorite guys like, players like Morelli that really work their way up to it, earning this award. But one of the things that Morelli was involved with was with Hershey specialty jerseys they wore in March with the Hershey Bears Cares initiative, where they went to Milton Hershey School and, had some of the students help, design logos for, positivity and inclusiveness in hockey. That, obviously benefited a lot of local organizations with being auctioned off after the game. And it was, one of the more unique specialty jerseys I think the Bears have ever done, at least in the last, 5-10 years that I can remember at least. So, it's one of those things where I think that, coming from a player of his background where he was signed to a contract, worked his way into being a regular for the Bears, it's almost a great perseverance story to see him earn this award, as well as, see all the contributions that, help shape a lot of lives in the Hershey area, amongst a lot of things that the Bears do, for sure. So it was great to see him get that award, just as a nice little nod to what Mason does. Excuse me.
Yeah, and we just got a little bit more news before we dive into the meat of the show, really, in the playoff race here. But, everyone's been watching, of course, the NHL playoffs going on above, but I still don't know if our fans out here kind of recognize the impact that a lot of former AHL players have been making in these playoffs. I mean, if you need any further evidence, looking at a guy like Akira Schmid coming in for the New Jersey Devils there and carrying that team to a big round one. some folks would call it upset. I wouldn't, but some folks would call it an upset over the New York Rangers. And, looking at guys like Kartye come in and make contributions immediately in Seattle, or I don't know, how about a guy like Carter Verhaeghe there, who's a all-star in Syracuse, now just winning Game 7 over the greatest regular season team in history. Not a big deal. So I just, what have been your guys' impressions on seeing a lot of these players kind of growing up before our eyes?
Okay, we need to focus on Akira for just a minute. He didn't just lead them to an upset. He led the New Jersey Devils to a shutout against the New York Rangers in Game 7. What? No. I mean, good for the kid. I mean, it's so cool to see where he was last year or I guess last season. And I mean, even this season, he has been with the Utica Comets for a decent part of this 2022-23 season. And then he gets called up to the big club and does this. I mean, it really is growing up before our eyes. I am super excited for him. And it looks like Nico Dawes is holding his own quite well down in Utica. But good job for Akira. I mean, we saw what he did, like I said, at the beginning of last season, that historic run that the Comets went on. And they've got a good one in that goalie. But yeah, I mean, come on, him. I know Joseph Woll hasn't done any, hasn't played because Samsonov hasn't given him a reason to need to play for the Maple Leafs yet. But, he's there ready and waiting. Ty Kartye, but talk about another goaltender here real quick. Alex Lyon.
Oh, you want to talk about Alex Lyon? I'll talk about Alex Lyon.
That's the time I watched a Florida Panthers game against the Boston Bruins, and Alex Lyon was playing. First of all, I loved all the social media content on him. He just has that personality that is just perfect for social media and video content. But man, he kept his team in it before Bob finally showed up. And oh my gosh, it's actually like good regular season Bob, the playoff Bob of the past, talking about Sergei Bobrovsky, of course. I don't know. That might be a thing of the past now.
Well, the thing about Bob is that you just have to throw him in front of an absolutely historic record-setting team, and he's just the giant killer apparently in that
Ask
spot.
Me how I know. Ask me how I know.
For Lyon to come in when Florida was desperately needing wins just to stay alive in the playoff race, carry him through that gauntlet at the end of the season, and then get him going, supplanting the $10 million goalie that Florida invested in for the games 1 and 2 starts. I mean, I would have, loved to have seen him slay the dragon, but, it's seeing Florida tie the game with a minute left in Game 7 and the reaction of the overtime winner. My eyes were glued on Lyon just for his reaction alone. And who doesn't want to see a grown man in a full suit of armor, pads, jumping up and down in absolute jubilation? I mean, that's why we're here. That's why we're watching the playoffs. So it's from Calder Cup champion last year to, I mean, there's a reason he's in the position that he's been in to, kind of start off in Charlotte and work his way through in that organization and to be that dependable guy that, okay, they've lost Spencer Knight to unfortunate circumstances, but that team, if anything, they rallied around him and have kind of caught a lot of people's hearts. I mean, everyone loves an underdog story, of course, but people also love to see the Bruins lose, myself included. And, there we go. I knew I had one in Corey. So when you gather all those things together, you kind of got a bit of a folk hero in Alex Lyon. But, for those like Sam Wismer over there covering him in Lehigh, and for myself here in Chicago, this is just another chapter in the story of an incredible human.
I mean, I have a little bit more of a tenuous relationship with both Bob and Lyon, kind of being them being the two guys that have been responsible for breaking my hearts a number of times over the years. Bobrovsky back in his days in Philadelphia before he figured out how to be a number one consistent goaltender. And admittedly, the Flyers shipped him out a little bit fast there too. Back in, I believe it was the end of the 2012 season, if I'm not mistaken, was when they traded him away there and put their hopes in Ilya Bryzgalov. We all remember how that goes. And Alex Lyon, having to see him oppose the Bears 12 to 14 times a year, depending on what the season was there for a while. I put in our little group chat here that my favorite memory of Alex Lyon is when, Nathan Walker buried a rebound on him back in the 2017 Calder Cup playoffs to lift the Bears to a Game 1 win and an eventual win in a best-of-5 series back at that time. So, I don't have as many fond memories of those two guys, but it's great to see. Like you were saying, you love to see an underdog story of some of these guys, popping out and surprising. I like to even stretch that to guys like, to me, like Ilya Samsonov is one that I love to see, where he was kind of cast aside from Washington, not too far removed from playing a couple of games in Hershey during the pandemic season, and really kind of running with that number one opportunity to get the Toronto Maple Leafs to where they are at this point as well, finally over that curse that, so many goalies failed in for the last almost decade, like it's cool to see that, out of all the teams left in the Stanley Cup playoffs, it's going to go to a team that hasn't won it in a decade or more. Or I can't remember what the most recent year I thought I saw on the list was, but, almost 2 decades for most teams. So that's what makes the Stanley Cup playoffs fun, is see a team that's not been there that, has really earned that opportunity to be there. And, you see a lot of AHL grads chipping in major ways.
Well, and of course, with both not Providence, but Boston and New York being eliminated, that means the Providence Bruins and the Hartford WolfPack are getting some reinforcements. And honestly, for Providence, they're getting it from both sides of the spectrum. They're getting Jacob Lauko from Boston, but also their ECHL affiliates. The Maine Mariners were just eliminated from the Kelly Cup playoffs in the ECHL. So they're getting Curtis Hall, Michael DiPietro from there. And then Hartford getting a list of 4 players from the New York Rangers, including Louis Domingue in goal. I mean, come on. Not that they needed another goaltender that can do the thing, but they're getting another goaltender that can do the thing. But, Johnny Brodzinski, Jake Gleschison, Lieber Hajek, all coming back. So good, strong team getting stronger, but Providence also, like I said, getting a little bit of reinforcements. But it's kind of going back to the point that we were talking about. It is so cool to see these AHL graduates, I guess you can call them, making such, not just making an impact, like Zach. Oh, I have to bring up Zach Dalpe got his first ever NHL postseason goal the other night for the Florida Panthers. So even though I'm not necessarily cheering for the Panthers, I always cheer for Zach Dalpe to be happy. So great job, Dalps. I was super excited to see that. That was such a cool celebration. But it's just cool to see these guys contributing in major positive ways.
What would make Zach Dalpe really happy is if the Florida Panthers advance to the conference finals. I'm just putting that out there. He'd be a little happy about that.
Just a little bit.
So we've been touching a little bit there on Hartford and Providence. I say the fans are here for playoff content. Let's give them playoff content. Let's roll right into it. And I mean, we've alluded to it already. 5 seed Hartford up 2-0 on Providence. 2 wins in hostile territory. Only giving up 1 goal in the process. What the Hartford, man? I mean, this team's been absolutely on a roll for not just in these playoffs, but for a while leading into them, and they've kind of carried that momentum into this postseason run. Now they're turning it over in the home ice. I'm going to throw it to Corey. He's our Atlantic Division guy. Can Hartford close it out? And how dangerous do you think this team is, not just in this series, but to continue the momentum, maybe crawl out of that Atlantic Division bracket from the 5 spot?
Yeah, I would say the answer is yes, they're dangerous. And should people be afraid? Very afraid, I think. They're the team that kind of nobody's wanted to play at this point. Because, I mean, like you said, they won 8 in a row. The only team that had put up a fight to them really at any point in that stretch is the Springfield Thunderbirds, who they proved were no match for them. They've, crumpled them up and, threw them out over their shoulders. It was not close. And, it's neat to see for Hartford because these were two different kinds of wins, right? They were low scoring, defensive minded. They held a team like Providence to 14 shots. That's very rare, especially in their own building. I mean, Hartford has been built differently against, Providence in that they've had some success in their building before, but it's one of those things where I think it's a fascinating matchup because Providence has just been this model of consistency in terms of both finding scoring. They Deana alluded to, they're at full power and then some. They're getting more of their guys back. I think just one reinforcement singular from Boston at this point. But, they've had their full weight, guys like Vinny Lettieri, Georgi Merkulov, the list goes on and on and on. They've had all this success in the regular season, much like we were just talking about with Boston. And here they are. They're going to XL Center for at least 2 games, and they their whole season's on the line all of a sudden. It's amazing how, not taking advantage of home ice can really put you behind the 8 ball. I think Providence maybe was a victim of not being completely ready out of the gate. That 1-0 score and 14 shots on goal for, kind of tells me that, maybe they weren't ready as much as they thought they were. But, and, that's the challenge of having that bye, right? You're not playing hockey for a little while. On paper, that's a good thing. You're rested and ready to go. But in some ways, getting out of action for 10, 12, 13 days, whatever it is, that can really mess with the team. So I think the Hartford, they've been playing for their lives essentially for the last month and a half or so, at least. Obviously more than that. Deana said earlier, none of us would have predicted, myself included, I wouldn't have predicted that Hartford would be standing here, looking at a trip to the, division finals here. So I think it's a tribute to, how they benefited from stability with their lineup at long last and, really found something special here. And, if they can manage to win this series on Wednesday, they'd be the first team in Atlantic Division history to ever really come out of the play-in round and, advance to the division final. Nobody did it last year. So it would be, some nice history for them to collect. That's kind of, if nothing else, if they were not to go any further than that, it's a nice little punchline to their season to say, hey, we made it a lot further than anybody else in our position has ever done it. And they're uniquely, qualified in that respect too. So I love it. I absolutely love it. It's a great story out of the Atlantic. On the other side of it, I'll just dive right in without prompt because you guys know I don't have a hard time talking about the Hershey Bears, and especially when I get to talk about 2 wins in Charlotte. Thank goodness it finally happened. It's the first time ever since the Albany River Rats became the Charlotte Checkers that the Bears have won 2 games in a back-to-back set in Charlotte. Ever. Now, obviously, that's a smaller sample size than you think because the Charlotte Checkers were technically in the Western Conference for the better part of, half a decade or so of that time since they, moved from Albany and all that good stuff. A lot of confusion there, honestly. It was confusing looking back at how the divisions were aligned, back in 2014-15 and 15-16 and all that good stuff. Good history lesson if you guys ever go back for it type of thing. So, the Bears took care of business, and it was 2 good kinds of wins, kind of the opposite of Providence in a sense, because the Bears came out really hard. They won both games by scoring 5 goals each. We look at a 5-1 and a 5-2 win, and you say to yourself, oh, they just kind of trounced them type of thing. Not so, my friends, not so. The Bears, they really ran Matt Guzda out of the crease and onto the bench. It's a huge thing because Guzda's been a great goaltender all season long for the Charlotte Checkers. And, it was a lot of rookies getting in there too. You had a variety of scoring. Alexei Protas, Hendrix Lapierre, Connor McMichael, all those guys getting on the board for their first Calder Cup playoff goals. And, they were able to build up a 4-0 lead. We've had to worry about the Bears when they've had 3-goal leads in Charlotte. They've blown it. They had blown it twice in calendar year 2022 in Charlotte, believe it or not. I remember, but the scars are still very much in my mind. So, it was a little bit tenuous, but at 4-2, it never really felt like the Bears could collapse that far and, give them a lot of credit. They're the only team in the East to have allowed less than 200 goals against this entire season that we just went through. So, give them a lot of credit for that, and they really stuck into it. But, the second game as well, it was 2-0. The, Checkers got into it, scored a goal to make it 2-1. You're suddenly thinking to yourself, wow, we're going to have to suddenly be looking at defending for 9-10 minutes of a 1-goal lead. And the Bears just kind of said no. The next shift, they went out after a TV timeout. They went out and scored 2 goals in 23 seconds. It went from 2-1 to 4-1. And it just, the Checkers are just not built to come back from deficits, especially against a team as defensive as Hershey. So maybe a little bit antithesis to Providence. I mean, you give Providence credit. They seem to bounce back at least a good amount. Obviously, it wasn't good enough for the win, but, they seem to look more like themselves in game 2. But the Bears seem to be themselves from game 1. And, kind of avoid that danger of being in that situation there. And you got to love it. They turn a disadvantage and starting in Charlotte into an advantage where they can, try to close out the Checkers in as many as 3 games in front of their home fans at Giant Center. So, where they've been the Eastern Conference's best team at home with 23 wins and 50 points. So, a lot of the writing is on the wall. I'm Charlotte. That's a Herculean task that is not going to be easy for them by any stretch. So, if we're looking at Hershey Hartford, which, it's kind of looking like it at this point, it'll be a rematch of 2015. I really think that it's going to be a great series to watch because it will truly be a test for both teams. I mean, Hershey's maybe going to be, a little bit more ready for them than perhaps Providence has been. And, obviously we're not putting the cart before the horse here. There's still games to be played, but, it could be a very intriguing matchup once we get there. So both those games play out on Wednesday. Looking forward to seeing how both of those go and seeing if we're going to have sweeps or if we're going to have a little bit more intrigue to both those series before all is said and done.
Yep. Just want to look at the other side on the our 2 teams that are looking 2-0 here, dead in the eye. As for Providence, I mean, they don't have Vinny Lettieri. He hasn't played since April 16th, which is super unfortunate. The guy only had 7 goals and 5 assists in the last 6 games heading into the injury. So
that's been a mystery this year too for them because he came back. I'll never forget it because he had like a 5-point game against Hershey in his return from injury. He seemed to just spring back to health at the right time. And then he got hurt again and he missed all this time. And then he comes back and then he gets hurt. Like what, you can't say they put him in witness protection anymore to, preserve him for the playoffs because now he's out again when they need him the most. And I actually didn't know that he was missing from those games, to be honest with you. So I'm shell-shocked at that.
Yeah, I obviously, I think that's a bit to consider, them only scoring 1 goal in 2 games, but at the same time, guys like Georgi Merkulov and Fabian Lysol, they gotta step up for the squad. And on the other side, Charlotte, what's in game 3? What are you thinking? And Matt Guzda has been pulled out of 2 of the 3 games here in the postseason. JF Berube just got shelled in game 2. Who do you go to there in game 3 with your season on the line?
I was just saying coin flip.
Coin flip. It's it's not a bad idea at this point. I mean,
let the hockey guys decide.
It stinks because it's like, with Guzda, he's been so good all year. And for him to have these problems is maybe natural for a younger kid. I mean, you guys may know the stats a little bit better than me in this respect, but I don't know that he was he in net last year for them during the postseason? I don't know. In their run that wasn't quite meant to be. And, obviously they're probably a little bit disappointed that Florida won selfishly, I'm sure, just because they don't get guys like Zach Dalpe or, even potentially Alex Lyon back from Florida. They're missing those 2 guys. And, I would tend to throw it back to Berube. I don't really feel like he was the issue. And even Guzda to a certain extent, I felt the Guzda pool in game 1 was more of a wake-up call to the guys. The goal they pulled him on was Hendrix Lapierre's first. And, Hendrix Lapierre threw it from the boards, and it hit a defenseman's skate on the other side of the crease from Guzda and went in. So to me, it wasn't exactly his fault. And, you got to give it up to Berube a little bit. Most of those goals weren't too much he could do about that. Anyhow, they had some prime real estate setups. I think back to a couple of the goals, and the Bears had perfect centering passes. Goals from the slot, right above the crease, high traffic areas that probably should have gotten defensive sticks on. So I think the onus is a little bit on everybody in that sense to maybe just tighten up a little bit. I don't really see it as being either of those two goaltenders' faults for the polls there, certainly. So I do agree with Deana, though. I think it's a coin flip.
Well, we're going to stay in the East, but we're going to look a little more to the North. And we're going to start off with our division winners there, Toronto, taking on those pesky Utica Comets. And we're tied 1-1 here in this series. Toronto with that first victory, kind of come from behind, 3-goal. I guess that's Toronto's theme this playoff season, much to my own chagrin. But I digress. Utica came back with a huge response there in game 2. I mean, I don't want to kind of jinx Toronto here, but they're looking a little like Utica of last year with the strong start early on. And I mean, 12 goals against in the first 2 games. I got to be feeling a little shaky if I'm a Marlie.
Yeah, it's we're basically, like you said, we're starting with the northernmost north, with the Marlies. I mean, the thing we got to remember about Toronto, though, is this is their real first look at the postseason this year. While Utica outlasted, the other Canadian team in the north, the Laval Rocket, in 2 straight last rounds. So they're kind of in that little vibe here, I guess you can call it. Whereas Toronto is just kind of really figuring out, like, okay, what is postseason this year? But, I do have to give the Toronto Marlies, a little bit of a stick tap here. I mean, come on, game 1, Utica blowing that 3-goal lead, even though Nico Dawes really still kind of kept his team in it, but ended up being 6 in favor of the Marlies. But huge shout out to Joseph Blandisi for getting his first career overtime game winner. But that was really the cherry on top on an impressive showing for the Marlies in game 1. I mean, I've noted 7 different Marlies: Nick Abruzzese, Semyon Argachintsev, Pontus Holmberg, Mark Johnston, Topi Niemela, Matteo Petronello, Alex Steves, all recording their very first AHL point in the postseason in game 1. Now, some of those names, I mean, honestly, shocked me, like Darryl Argachintsev, Steves. Like, these names have been around at least for a couple seasons, so you would think maybe they would have scored by now, but I digress. But game 2, Andrew said it was all Utica, 7-2, and that was really a team that learned from their mistakes from game 1. I mean, Brian Halonen got the scoring started a minute 46 into the opening frame for the Comets, and they just did not look back. But what's even more impressive is, and I'll be talking about scoring by committee a little bit more here in a few minutes, but that game, 7 goals by 7 different goal scorers. What more could you want from your team? It was Halonen, Arni Talvidi, both in the first. In the second, Nolan Stevens, Ryan Schmelzer, Xavier Parent. In the second period, third period, Graham Clark, Brian Pino. It was, everybody took their fair share of scoring in that. And that is what you ideally want in the postseason. You don't want to just have to rely on your, top couple guys. So
that's all part of the balanced breakfast.
Oh yeah. But I was talking to Zach Power about this. He is our Marlies expert here, and he says that he hates to push the panic button, but in true Zach Power fashion, he's gonna press the panic button. Yeah. Keith Petruzzelli was just, as he calls it, meh in game 1. In game 2, he was, and I quote, god awful terrible. So, according to the Marlies broadcast, I mean, Petruzzelli was pulled ultimately in that 7-2 loss. Dennis Hiddleby actually playing, I believe, 11 minutes of time that game. Yeah, 11 minutes even. So they're looking at possibly getting someone else the start in game 3, which according to Zach may not be the worst idea in the world. But of course, Joseph Wool's up with the Maple Leafs. He's just down the the Gardner, I believe, Expressway in downtown. But without someone like him, things could get really nasty, and I don't think Joseph Woll's coming back anytime soon. As we talked about, it's all over the hockey news world. The Maple Leafs are doing very anti-Maple Leafs playoff things, and good for them. But with Samsonov and Woll leading the charge up front, and Matt Murray basically lost. I don't know where he is. The Marlies are what they are. So headed into game 3 on Wednesday, this is really going to show the true colors of who the better team is. Nico Daws, again, expected to rest possibly for game 3. That's the word it sounds like so far. But I mean, if you're Utica, wouldn't you see if maybe he has enough in the tank for another bout, try to get this closed out as soon as possible, especially since, this series is a lot later in starting. Again, they're only getting to game 3. And then the other North Division series is already in their getting ready to start their deciding game 5. So you want to get this closed out. So the other team doesn't get to rest for too much. But Alex Steves, super confident headed into Wednesday's game 3. He said, it's not always wise to get too tied down to the results. At this point, it's even, and we're going to Utica, and there's a challenge ahead. I think if we get back to our recipe that we know, things will be all right. So we'll see how that turns out. Again, I believe that's at 7 o'clock on Wednesday. So today, if you are listening to it on the 3rd. But now we're going to turn real quick to the Syracuse Crunch versus the Rochester American series. Like I said, this one already is coming down to a very decisive game 5 out of 5 series. Now, Syracuse looked to have this all locked up right out of the gate. Took a commanding 2-game lead in the series, even blanking the Americans in game 2. I mean, at first it was 3-2 in game 1 in overtime, then 3-0. I mean, they thought, yeah, we've got this. We're going to move on. But the Amerks in game 3 had a huge statement, 8-5 offensive outbreak before themselves blanking the Crunch in Rochester in game 4. Now, in this series, Alex Barré-Boulet back up to his old tricks once again. 7 points in 4 games for the Crunch. But Gage Gonsalves, for those of us that are well-oriented in the North, that is not a huge surprise at all. He's also having a statement playoffs with 3 goals, 4 assists, in 4 games played. For the Amerks, Michael Mersch. I mean, once again, if you know anything about the Rochester Americans, this guy shows up when you need him to show up. Heating up at the right time with 3 goals, 2 assists, and 4 games played. Otherwise, honestly, for Rochester, it is, once again, you're going to hear me say it, scoring by committee. You just look down these score sheets. You have Declan Carlisle, Felix Robert, Philippe Myers, games we don't. Well, sorry, those are for Syracuse, if I can get the right list up here. But but still, good for them. Those were all their first of the postseason. But Linus Weissbach, Josh Pasolt, Isaac Rosen, Sean Malone, Yuri Kulik. We're getting contributions from up and down the lineup, not only in the top, but also down in scoring. I don't know if Darren Radish is eligible to come back. He has not been sent back yet, but with Tampa being eliminated, if it's possible, I wouldn't see why they wouldn't try to get him there to definitely get over that hurdle of defeating, finally, the Rochester Americans.
So who do you have in game 5?
My heart says Syracuse, but my brain is saying Rochester's on a roll and they're going to do it.
See, I'm thinking the opposite. This has been home team domination in this series. My heart says the Kartye kids in Rochester. I'm still in a love fest with them from last playoff, let alone this one. So I want to see that magic continue against. I would love to see a rematch with Utica in the North Division Finals, but Syracuse at home, you got to figure they're going to figure out a way to respond in a deciding game like that. I see the Crunch moving on. My brain says it, but my heart says something different.
Yeah. So I guess our hearts and our brains are in 2 different places. I mean, I'm by default, I'm a Tampa Bay Lightning fan. They were my team well before my hometown Columbus Blue Jackets even were a thought or a twinkle in the eye of the original ownership group. But yeah, so I have to go with Syracuse. But like I said, I can never count out a team that has that type of depth scoring. Never. I can never count that out. But I don't know. I like the advantage that Syracuse has. They just got that goaltending duo that just, I don't know, between Max Legacy and Hugo Honefeld. I just like them a little bit more than Malcolm Subban and Michael Hauser. I still think of Michael Hauser as primarily an ECHL goalie. I think Syracuse has the advantage, but that's why they play the games and they don't let the paper decide.
That's right. If the paper decided, it would have been the Boston Bruins moving on, not the Florida Panthers. But hey, I'm excited for Game 5. I know all the Crunch and Amerks fans out there. I mean, and if you're a fan of this league, you should be tuned in for that one. It's going to be a doozy. But we're gonna flip the page a little bit here and go on and see what's going on over there in the West. Now, starting off with my domain here in the Central, a lot of familiar faces, but none of the ones that I had a lot of coverage. And my beats are kind of watching this on the couch with me here. But we're going to start off with the division winners there in Texas taking on the winners of the play-in series there in Rockford. And this one's kind of, I don't want to say it's pretty much what I expected, because Rockford came in with a bit of a different look than they'd seen all season. I mean, they added Rocco Grimaldi, Joey Anderson, a lot of Anton Hudobin, a lot of faces to really kind of get this team in a long Calder Cup run for namely a lot of the young players that they have in that team to kind of help grow a winning culture back up in Chicago, kind of just building piece by piece. But I could kind of see that early on, there were red flags that everything kind of wasn't really gelling for the IceHogs. I don't want to say they stumbled into the playoffs at any bit, but they, by the hair of their chinny chin, did they just get past the Chicago Wolves for that spot. And they were able to take out the Iowa Wild in a couple of overtime games. And again, they had so much early season success with the Cini, Gus, Reichel line. I mean, you saw the three of them in the top 5 of scoring for virtually the whole first half of the season. And you're like, wow, this team's ready to blow the doors down. And it's just the second half, they never really, you saw call-ups, of course, to Chicago because they're barely fielding an NHL roster up there as it is. So they needed all the help they could get. But then once they came back down, there hasn't been a lot of cohesion in that Rockford team, and the Stars are just a well-oiled machine. I've talked before about how they start from the blue line out, and they have 3 defensive pairings of guys who are big, guys who can wheel, guys who can move the puck. They're just two-way dominance on each of their defensive pairings. There's no room to maneuver past guys like that. So it's been very difficult here for Rockford. They're down 2-0. And again, I don't want to say it's kind of what you expect, but it's kind of what you expect. I mean, number 1 team in the division versus a team that comes in through the play-in. This is not as exciting as, say, Hartford coming in and throwing in the upset wagons over there in Providence. This is a little more traditional stories over here. But one of the big storylines coming in is where in the world is Lukas Reichel? A young, real talented prospect for the IceHogs there all season. A lot of time up in Chicago, comes in with the expectation to be a big driver of the offense going into the postseason. He's still looking for his first point. There it is. I knew we were getting it eventually. Corey Chesney joining us on the set. How you doing? How you feeling with that, Corey?
I brought it back, man. I brought it back. You could see the hat was above me the whole time, just looming, waiting for its return here.
I knew it was coming. Yeehaw. That's what Texas is saying in this series, and that's what Corey's got bringing to you here. I love it.
I saw in the notes and just in looking at the series that my boy Riley Barber is having a great time so far, as expected. So I had to go and make sure I show some love to one of my favorite former Bears here. I didn't see that the Rockford IceHogs are icing Garrett Mitchell at all during the series. Don't know what's going on there, but I was kind of hoping for the matchup of two former Bears there, certainly. But definitely take having some Riley Barber success on my bingo card any day of the week.
Yeah, I definitely miss having coverage of Riley Barber in Grand Rapids, but it seems that he was very keen on playing postseason hockey. So he signed with the Dallas Stars organization over the summer. And I mean, it just is absolutely a perfect match. You throw a big veteran presence, a huge sniper at this level like Riley. And, the Barber of Seville has been doing all sorts of damage. A real backbreaking moment in game 2. Rockford had a power play on a penalty of his. Chance to kind of, do some damage there. Didn't really turn out. And as soon as that power play ends, Barber's coming the other way, scores, and, the rest kind of writes itself. So Rockford, 2 home games, 2 home losses. We can talk about what they could do, what adjustments they could make, but I don't see them winning 3 straight against Texas on the road. It's the cards are stacked up against them. I mean, thanks for coming out, Rockford. I'm a little biased when I'd say I'd kind of would have rather seen a red hot Chicago team in your situation instead, maybe make it a little more interesting, but also just as plausible to see the Chicago Wolves getting dummied in this situation. And we're talking about the same thing. So it's really, ipso facto, yin yang, that kind of thing. Let's go to something that's a little more, I would say, closer, it's a little more fun to talk about. That's Milwaukee and Manitoba. Holy heavyweights, Hannah. We got a matchup here. I mean, all of those reinforcements coming in from Nashville loading up Milwaukee. And I mean, they come in and just throw a haymaker at the Moose in game 1. And we'll get into that. But, you just got this feeling that all season long, Milwaukee was, I wouldn't say all season long. Second half of the season, Nashville is really torn up by injuries. They trade half of their lineup away for $1 billion picks from Edmonton and Tampa Bay. And they were still in the thick of the playoff race until just about game 82, because you have the likes of, John Leonard, Phil Tomasino, Jordan Gross, Tommy Novak. Oh, my Lord, Tommy Novak coming in and doing incredible things up there in Nashville. And they didn't miss a beat there. Milwaukee didn't miss a beat on their end. Just a kind of, I don't want to say a ragtag group, but, Isaac Ratcliffe gets acquired from Lehigh Valley and comes in and makes just immediate contributions where, there's opportunity. There's times to make yourself known. And when you combine all of that together, and after game 1, I thought, oh boy, Milwaukee's might just kind of run away with this one. But Manitoba, with a gutsy response in game 2, tying it up with a minute left and then winning in overtime in front of that raucous crowd. I mean, can they win 2 out of 3 in Milwaukee? It's going to be an uphill battle, but I don't see why not. I know you got Yaroslav Askarov and the ghosts of Connor Ingram past, but why not Manitoba? I mean, this is a well-coached team that plays that postseason style almost to a T, the way that they forecheck and get pucks in deep. It's just absolutely menacing to be a Chicago and Grand Rapids beat writer, and you have to watch them just grind it out for 60 minutes and just the inevitable coming in at you with 40 shots from all over the zone. It's not going to be that easy for this Milwaukee team, and I pegged this team to come out of the Central way back in October, and I'm going to stick to it, but this is going to be a fight for them. And you got a heavyweight matchup that I don't think a lot of people were expecting this early on, but I think that both of these teams are very capable of making noise. And you're going to have a lot of fireworks going on in the rest of this, and I'm all for it. I'm here for it. I am all about Central Division hockey here.
So one point I do want to make about Texas. Earlier this season, I got a chance to talk to Neil Graham and Curtis McKenzie. And one thing, for those of you that don't know, Neil Graham, of course, the head coach, Curtis McKenzie, longtime player in the American Hockey League and also the team's captain, but they made it very clear that this is not a surprise. Their success this season, and I'm going to assume the success that they're having this postseason, is something they've been consciously working towards for at least the past 3 seasons. They have been tinkering with their lineups. They have been adding in important pieces like Riley Barber being one of them to make this team what it is. And that's why it's working so well. Even when they hit that little bit of, I'll just call it a speed bump, a hiccup, there in the regular season, but they worked through it. They got through it. This is a team that screams finals to me, but that just the Western Conference is going to be fun, I think. I mean, of course, the East is too, but just like last season, I'm gonna say it again this season, that Western Conference is something else. And Hershey, just because I have a soft spot for them now. But yeah, the Texas Stars, I would not be surprised if that's the team coming out of the West, just because they have spent so much time perfecting this team, this product, and they're just firing on all the right cylinders.
It's a well-oiled machine out there in Texas. Even with Corey taking the hat off, I still feel him very cowboy-y over here. And they're the Stars. They just keep coming. And when you can not only defend well, but then move the puck out in transition, I always felt that was the secret to Chicago's success in the playoffs last year. Was that they kept the chances to a minimum, and then boom, they're in transition. And they got just depth at all positions. They got the other Matt Murray, who's not missing, but is very involved, in fact. And he's, just doing whatever he does. It's solid top to bottom. And, they don't over rely on this piece or that. It's just all parts coming together. And that's it. That's what you need in the postseason. If you put all your eggs in one basket, it can really break apart. I'm looking at you, New York Rangers, but we're gonna move a little further out west and keep pushing out to the coast. We're going into the Pacific, and here we're gonna go up north a little bit. Got the number 1 team in the land, Calgary, hanging on to a 2-0 lead over the Abbotsford Canucks. Now, I feel like the Canucks have kind of had their hearts broken back to back. I mean, you get the number 1 team in town in their barn in overtime, you lose twice. That's just that's hard. I mean, in game 1, you really felt like the Canucks were out to make a statement. They forced a ton of turnovers. Their forecheck was incredible. They got behind the defense, and if it wasn't for, just the MVP, Dustin Wolf, I feel like they could have had a real good shot at taking that one out, especially because, 10 minutes in, Matthew Phillips spears Jet Wu, gets a 5-minute match penalty, and you feel like, okay, here's the chance for the Canucks. They respond by throwing the puck in their own net behind Spencer Martin. Yeah, that's an oof. But they battled back and turn it, and with 5 minutes left, Atu Ratu ties the game up, and just in overtime, it's that one chance. You have to, as the great prophet of our times, Marshall Mathers said, you only have one shot. Do not miss your chance to blow. This opportunity comes once in a lifetime, yo. And they've dropped both of them. And in game 2 was even, I won't even say more egregious. They're tied 1-1. Calgary's they were actually losing 1-0 at that time. Calgary's on a power play, and Arshdeep Bains makes it rain with not one, but 2 shorthanded goals in the same penalty. And then they score, Tristan Nielsen scores another one. You're up 3-1 in Calgary's barn. But what happens? You take penalties and penalties and penalties. They put the Wranglers power play out on the ice 9 times. What did you think was going to happen? Yeah, well, Calgary scores twice, ties the game on the power play. And oh, by the way, power play in overtime. Who is it? Matthew Phillips, of course, because who else would it be, honestly, other than, just the guy who got kicked out in game 1 and is coming looking for a little revenge there in game 2. So, honestly, if you're the Canucks, you got to feel happy with how the manner and style in which you've played, because you've hung around with the number 1 team in the land in their own barn for over 120 minutes. And it's just, the circumstances of A, you're facing the best goalie in the league. B, you're not converting on opportunities. C, just dumb luck that you're down 2-0 here. You got to just turn the page. It's a one game at a time. You're coming back home. Your fans have been dying for some meaningful hockey out there in British Columbia. Give them something to cheer for. You can play with these guys. Don't try and run and gun, because Calgary will make you burn. You gotta keep grinding. You gotta keep getting those pucks behind their defense and force these guys into turnovers. Eventually, something will break in Dustin Wolf. He can't be Jesus reincarnated forever, right? So maybe he can. I don't know. This guy's really good, but you gotta just keep. It's little adjustments here and there. Maybe not go to the box 9 times, but it's really it's. I know it's 2-0. I know you got the Goliath on top of your David here. Just keep playing. You got to just keep playing. And I don't think they're that far off. I do think Abbotsford can make this interesting still, but that's the thing about when you're going up against a juggernaut, that margin of error is so thin. Abbotsford could easily be up 2-0, but they're on the brink, and we'll really see what this team is made of in game 3.
I mean, 9 times in the playoffs, in the regular season, that's going to be ouch. But in the playoffs, it doesn't matter what level of hockey you're in. It has to be something blatantly egregious for an official to call it. I'm literally my mind is just blown right now.
9 times.
9 times in one game, right? One game?
One game. Yes. No, that was just one game. Yeah, that was game 2.
Yeah. No, guys. Oof. We're bringing it back. Oof. No.
And I know, you're feeling confident with Arshdeep making it rain. Baines over here scoring 2 shorties, but talk about playing with fire, man. This is the number 1 team. You got to lock her down. You got us. Just all about regrouping here. I mean, that's what the playoffs is all about. You just took a shot to the jaw and you're on the mat. How well can Abbotsford get back up and pull themselves off this mat?
They're just lucky that Calgary's power play didn't make them pay more than they already did. I mean, in both games, only 2 power play goals. Granted, they were both in the same game, but
the game tying and the game winning goal. That's the time to have a power play goal.
But it could have been worse. They could have absolutely smoked them out of the water, but either way, the result's still the same.
If you give them enough time to practice, eventually they're going to break through. I don't care, what your success rate is or anything like that. If you go to the box 9 times, you deserve to lose, just because your discipline's not good enough. Now, sometimes those without knowing that game front to back type of thing, it sounds like there's a potential for some things like 5-on-3s or even, I mean, that's almost entire periods worth of play worth in the box. You're relying on those same few guys. It's not like you said, it's just not going to work.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
42 shots for the Wranglers there in game 2. I mean, Abbotsford went with Spencer Martin in game 1. He played well, but Wolf was just on another level. Arthur Seelovs did what he could in game 2. you could feasibly either one could be the starter in game 3, and it would be the right choice for Abbotsford. You got both guys who have been playing very well and have spent time up there in Vancouver, but you gotta just clean a few things up, and hey, you never know.
So my question is, now's Hoglander. He had 4 of those 9 penalties in that game, including the one that led to the game tying and the game winning power play. Does he sit the next game as kind of a, here's your lesson, at this point you're more of a liability, or do they give him a shot to redeem himself?
I think because he was kind of the guy that got him through Bakersfield, with including both game-winning goals in the opening round series. He's probably their top prospect. Coach probably bag-skated him quite a bit after that game 2 loss, but I don't think that you take a guy like him off the ice. It's, again, you're gonna smack his knuckles with the ruler for sure, with the old coaching ruler, but I don't think he's going anywhere. It's definitely been Jekyll and Hyde for him. From hero against the Condors to GOAT against the Wranglers. I'm not talking about the greatest of all time. I'm talking about like he's the guy dragging you down here a bit, as you said. But that's all part of learning at this level. And if you sit a guy like that, he's not going to learn how to recover from his mistakes. And I think what you saw in those first 2 games against Bakersfield was a player starting to kind of come into his own, really following the tutelage of the Sedins that have been developing the players there in Vancouver and also in Abbotsford. And a guy who at first was filled with a lot of promise going into Vancouver, didn't really work out. There was a lot of he wasn't ready for the big time. Coming down to Abbotsford and kind of figuring out his game and taking a bit of okay, let's round out what you got here. A lot of raw talent. Now let's mold that into a pro hockey player that can make contributions in Vancouver, rather than, okay, we just kind of have a bit of a dumpster fire here in Vancouver. Let's throw him out there and see what he can do. Stay out of the box, Niels, but I like what you have going on. And if this team's going to have any chance of coming back, he's got to drive the offense. He's got to lead that power play. And the Canucks are getting opportunities. He's got to bury one, and maybe it'll lead to a couple of the other guys burying a couple of theirs. And then we have one more left here in the West Coast. I know you got to keep your eyes open with those late 10 o'clock puck drops, but they're just as exciting over there. And this is what I was alluding to earlier with my surprise of the playoffs. Coachella Valley Firebirds, who, as we alluded to, were kind of a juggernaut through the regular season, now find themselves on the brink. I mean, game 1 against the Colorado Eagles, they dust them a bit. Justus Annunen, a big playoff performer, they drop a 6er on them. Next thing you know, Jonas Johansson of the Wheel of Fate fame is now getting the start in game 2. Shuts the door in game 3 with a shutout. Just like that, the Eagles up 2-1. I know I wasn't expecting this. I don't know how your guys' reactions to that, but I mean, there's a lot of hockey to play.
Same, 100% same. I don't even truly know what to say about this series other than good job, Colorado. I mean, it's the Battle of the Birds, and we're going to find out which is more supreme, the very majestic eagle or the red hot, pun totally intended here, Firebirds. It looks like the Eagles might be dousing them And Corey's just putting in the chat. Everyone knows that the bird is the word. I will save you my terrible singing and dancing. Nobody wants to see that. So yeah. But I don't think we've heard the last of the Coachella Valley Firebirds, though. They've done too well to go that quietly. It's all they need is just one guy. One guy. Is it Max McCormick? Is it Cole Lind? Maybe it's Riker Evans. I don't know. They just need one guy to just go off. And I think it will just be kind of the entire committee or the rest of the team will just, we will follow you, dear leader, and they'll be fine. But Colorado was a surprise last season. Not exactly surprising that they're kind of redoing the script, deja vu all over again in 2023.
Yeah. Well, now they're getting reinforcements that they didn't have last year with the Avalanche bowing out early to this Coachella's parent team in Seattle. So they're not getting the reinforcements. You wonder if that Game 7 would have been flopped a different way, how it then would affect this series. So now you got a couple more Eagles to worry about. Kartye was a huge producer there in Coachella. You don't have him. Obviously, Potts is what can we honestly say about Potts that hasn't been said about him a million times already in here? He's been they were teasing a possible return this playoff, maybe if they were going through a deep run. But I mean, if they can't get it together here in this series, well, unfortunately, Potsy's just going to have to continue his career in the broadcast booth, which is actually looking very promising. And I want him to keep playing hockey as long as possible, but I can't wait for broadcaster Potts to enter my life. I think Coachella has just got to dig deep. I think Colorado made the right adjustments. I wasn't entirely sold on them sitting on and in at first. I was like, well, this is kind of like your guy. This is your goaltender of the future. And for the Avalanche, maybe kind of ride them and see what happens. But then Johansson comes in and shuts the door, and it's like, oh, okay, I guess I really don't know anything. So the Eagles have made the right choice, the right decisions. The coaching adjustments have been particularly effective here, and you've seen a more effective Eagles team. And can we talk a little bit about Keaton Middleton and his propensity for scoring absolutely clutch postseason goals? Like overtime winner in Game 3, he basically broke the Ontario Reign last season with that center ice dump in. I believe he had 2 that game, and he had 2 all season. So I don't know what it is about Keaton Middleton and just clutch postseason scoring, but that's the playoffs. They come from the most unlikeliest of places.
Is his nickname Killer Keaton?
It should be. It is now. If it wasn't before, it is now. So
you're welcome.
Keaton, if you're listening, you are most definitely welcome. So we've kind of rolled all of these playoff series up into a little burrito here, and I'm feeling pretty hungry because it's about dinner time. But as we look at all these, we've talked about our expectations heading into them, what's been very surprising so far. What's the story of the second round here, folks?
Expect the unexpected, because it's the playoffs and literally anything can happen. And yeah, that's it for me.
Well, I mean, we thrive on chaos here at this podcast. So, I mean, we kind of, it's fitting that we're a hockey podcast because, like you see in the NHL, the AHL, there's a lot of chaos here too. I mean, I just think of it from, talking about the Atlantic here a little while ago, is that you have one bracket that's kind of gone as expected, but one that's completely unexpected. So it's it's kind of this telltale little swing of who's going to be the the team that wilts if you're one of the top teams, and who's going to be the underdog that overpowers surprises some people. And it's great that we've had those matchups on both sides, all sides of the bracket, really, where you're kind of asking those questions, and things are just so wide open. To a greater degree, I think that we even saw last year too.
And also the AHL is where NHL teams go to exact their revenge, possibly. AKA, the Eagles and the Firebirds, the Colorado Avalanche maybe exacting their revenge on the Seattle Kraken by taking out the baby team. I don't know. We'll see.
All I
That's
can
why
say
we
to
watch the
that
games.
is cacaw. So we'll see who comes out on top of the Battle of the Birds there. But yeah, that's our postseason burrito there for you. We have a ton more of round 2 hockey and round 3, 4, and Calder Cup finals coming at you here on the Holy Grail. I'm super stoked. I've said that enough before, but I believe we got us a bonus round here, and it is Mr. Swartz coming at us with some more Bears trivia.
Well, it's more Checkers trivia than it is Bears trivia, but the Bears are inextricably tied to this bit of trivia a little bit. So this is the third all-time meeting between the Bears and the Checkers, and I think Deana is probably going to be the one to sniff this question out a little bit faster than anybody, just given the answers here. But the first time the Bears and the Checkers met was back in 2011. It was the Checkers' inaugural season in their move from Charlotte. Can you guys name 2 players from that team that played on that team in 2011 that are, or at least, possibly should have played on this year's team? I hope I didn't give it away with that last little tidbit there, because it is a little tidbit.
Zach Dalpe?
Zach
And
Dalpe is
Riley
one of them.
Nash.
And Riley Nash. Yes, those are the 2 guys.
All right.
Teamwork.
Bonus points if you can name which one of them predates actually dates back to the Albany River Rats days, one of the last remaining Albany River Rats.
I'm pretty sure that's Riley Nash.
It is Zach Dalpe. Zach
Oh,
Dalpe was a rookie in the 2009-10 season when the Bears steamrolled the Albany River Rats one last time en route to the 2010 Calder Cup. But Riley Nash was a rookie the next year with the Charlotte Checkers.
Yeah, he was at Cornell, I believe. Yeah.
That was one of my cool little bits of trivia, that those 2 guys have come full circle. Now they're wily veterans, still playing the Checkers and the Bears here in 2023. Neither of them played in the 2019 series, though. I did check that one. So I believe Zach was over with you, Deana, in Cleveland, or Lake Erie, as it was called at that time.
It was Cleveland then.
I want to say Riley Nash was in the NHL somewhere, and I'm trying to remember where, but it's not coming to me at the moment.
Guess
I
where?
use the AHL stats.
He was in Columbus, so I had them both.
That's even better then.
Right?
I wish I carried over the stats in the AHL's website to, show where they were in the NHL type of thing. But yeah, they were both, Charlotte Checkers then, and they're Charlotte Checkers now.
I just love, though, because I didn't know about that 2011 tie, but it's kind of neat to see how intrinsically connected Zach Dalpe and Riley Nash are. They
Absolutely.
kind of started their early career together. They spent a little bit of time in the CBJ organization, and now they're both on the Charlotte Checkers here a few seasons later. It's just kind of cool. Hockey truly is a small world after all.
By the way, I do have one little extra funny bit of trivia for you guys. So the Charlotte Checkers were actually an ECHL team before, they were the Albany River Rats were brought down, and the Checkers were promoted from the ECHL to the AHL, right? So it was kind of like a merger of that ECHL franchise and, turning into an AHL one. But I didn't know this, or I didn't remember this off the top of my head, I should say, but the Checkers actually moved from Bojangles Coliseum to Time Warner Cable Arena, I think it was called. And then they moved back to Bojangles Coliseum a few years later. I actually totally forgot about that. So I had to come up with some stats for, the Bears records at Bojangles, and then just, Bears records in Charlotte, period, because I'd forgotten that little piece of trivia.
I hope they had their worst season in team history when they moved from Bojangles, and then it was righted once they moved it back, because why would you leave Bojangles Coliseum?
Well, that was the funny thing, is that the arena was actually not suited for hockey. There was a lot of obstructed views, and it wasn't built as a hockey-first arena, it sounded like. So they got the memo a couple years later. It was only a couple years that they were over in, and I believe it was just because the capacity was bigger. It was an NBA arena type of thing, but not built for hockey. We'll just put it that way.
It's built for hockey. With a name like Bojangles, it's built for hockey. So, well, Corey, I don't know who won that bonus round, but thank you again for your always Bears-related trivia. I think
that was you. That was you.
Or was it me?
Oh,
we
yeah.
both got it. I wasn't sure who it was given.
We had the
got
tiebreaker there.
Okay.
My unintentional tiebreaker.
I'll take it. I will ride the Zach Dalpe train to a W. I'm hoping that Florida does the same this round. Am I showing my bias? I don't believe I am. Anyway, that's going to be it for the Holy Grail this week. If you'd like to see or hear more of us, please subscribe to us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Also, follow us on Twitter at the Holy Grail. All playoff long, we're going to be sharing videos and memes and all sorts of coverage. You don't want to miss out on that. You can also check out all of Field Pass Hockey's other podcasts. You can join Matthew Harding and Jason Mowles as they break down the ECHL's Wichita Thunder and chat with some of the team's legendary players. The Rolling Thunder podcast airs bi-weekly on Field Pass Hockey. You also have Syracuse Speaks with Alexandra Ackerman. Syracuse Speaks is a Syracuse Crunch-centric podcast that focuses on maintaining a balanced perspective in the ever-shifting world of minor league hockey. Oh, you're going to want to tune into that one after Game 5. I can guarantee you that. And on behalf of all of us here at the Holy Grail, we hope you have an amazing week, and we will see you next time. Bye.
This has been the Holy Grail Podcast. Have a question or a topic suggestion? Hit us up on Twitter or drop us an email. For the latest news across the American Hockey League and the rest of minor league hockey, download the Field Pass Hockey app, now available in the Apple and Android app stores.